right, we've learned about combustion of hydrocarbons, and now we're going to learn about the combustion of other substances. Here's where you'll see some blurring of the lines between the different types of reactions. So we learned about synthesis reactions, right? And here's a synthesis reaction. Sulfur dioxide plus oxygen gas will make sulfur trioxide. That's a synthesis reaction, but it's actually also a combustion reaction too. How we do this reaction is we burn sulfur dioxide in the presence of oxygen gas, and it synthesizes sulfur trioxide. We should balance this like we balance all of our equations. So there's 3 oxygens on the product side. I need to make that an even number in order to work out with the even numbers of oxygens on the other side. So I put a 2 there. I've got 6 oxygens. That means I need another 2 in front of the sulfur dioxide. That will balance out my sulfurs, but it actually also balances out my oxygens. Now I have 4 plus 2 oxygens on the reactant side, and we're balanced. The one other cool application that I want to look at in this section on combustion reactions is cellular respiration. So cellular respiration is a fancy term for the process your body uses to turn glucose, which is sugar, into energy that your body can actually use to run a marathon, to think really hard and learn some chemistry, or whatever you have to do. This here is the structural model of glucose. It's a little ring of carbons with an oxygen in there and a bunch of hydroxide groups off of it. So in your cells, glucose doesn't just light on fire, right? It's not like there's little campfires going on in all of your cells and that's how you're producing energy. What's really happening is that glucose is being broken down into smaller bits by a bunch of little chemical reactions, and so it's slowly transformed, and then the energy from the glucose gets stored in a form that cells can use. That form is called ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate. You'll learn all about ATP in your biology classes because ATP can go throughout the cell and do all kinds of work and make it do the stuff that the cell needs to do. It's a really great energy molecule. But how that process goes, there's tons of chemical reactions that get there. But if we zoom way out and we just look at the beginning and the end state, what we see is a combustion reaction. So if we start with glucose, so this guy right here, this is glucose. That's glucose, C6H12O6. So it's this 6 carbons are kind of in a ring, 1 carbon sticks off, there's an oxygen in that ring. That's your glucose molecule. We're gonna breathe in oxygen gas, right? You breathe that into your lungs and that gives oxygen to all of the cells in your body, right? Your blood cells are gonna carry that oxygen all around your body to every cell. And then over many chemical reactions, that's going to be broken down into carbon dioxide gas that you then breathe out. That gets transferred back to your lungs, right? And then you breathe it out, and water. So that chemical reaction, we can balance it too. There's 6 carbons over here in my glucose. So I should put a 6 in front of the carbon dioxide to balance the carbons. Now let's do the hydrogens. There's 12 here in glucose, so I need a 6 in front of the water to make 12 hydrogens. Now we'll count up the O's. I've got 6 times 2 oxygens, that's 12, plus another 6, that's 18. On this side, I have 6 oxygens in the glucose and just 2 here. So I need a 6 in front of the oxygen in order to balance that. And that's what your balanced chemical equation looks like for the combustion of glucose. So this diagram is just to remind you that this process is not little campfires in your cell. It's not as simple as just burning, like actually burning the glucose. That process is a very complicated process. The glucose gets broken down into glucose 6-phosphate and then fructose 6-phosphate. Like it goes all the way through this process, which is called glycolysis. Then it goes into this process, which is called the Krebs cycle. And it goes around that process all the way. It's releasing, right, these carbon dioxide molecules on the way. It's storing energy in ATP all along the way, and it's releasing water. All of that stuff is happening along the way. So overall, this looks like a combustion reaction. It's a lot more complicated than the other combustion reactions we've talked about. That whole process happens in 2 places. It starts out in the cytoplasm, and then it finishes in the mitochondria. So you've probably heard, oh, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Well, why is it the powerhouse? It's because that's where glucose is being turned into usable energy. So that when you hear the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, that's what it means. Glucose is being combusted, essentially. That combustion reaction is happening by the glucose breaking down and being put into ATP, which is this useful energy molecule. You'll learn all about it in biology, so I hope you have lots of fun learning all about the details of the Krebs cycle. But as you do that, I hope you remember the overall reaction here is just combustion. Glucose plus oxygen will make carbon dioxide and water.